Hey everyone, this is Mr. Thacker. Today we're going to be looking at multi-view sketching and creating objects or creating a multi-view sketch of a three-dimensional object. And so what you have been asked to print is a couple of the isometric sheets, as you see an example here, isometrics 1 through 12, as well as a so this is our problem sheet, okay, as well as the multi-view grid sheet in which we will be creating our multi-views on, okay. So what we need to start out with, and this will tie into the multi-view lesson that you guys have already been through. And so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and find out some information about our object. Now, the reality is we have not worked in isometrics, and so this may be a little bit new for you. So what I want to do is start out by sharing a few things that will help you guys out. First and foremost, one thing that we need to know about our objects when we start creating them is we need to know their size, okay? If we're going to replicate any of these objects, we've got to know the size. And so we've got a grid set up, and this grid, let me zoom in for you guys. This grid is what we call an isometric grid. All right, and we're going to start actually with problem number 1. So I'm going to demonstrate this problem with you guys, and in so doing, we want to find out the size. So I'll go ahead and write down the 3 dimensions, and we reviewed the 3 dimensions. Remember that they are width, height, and depth. Okay, and so I like to put these out to the side, to the right side here, and count my blocks. Now, there are several ways that you can accomplish this task. This object is pretty straightforward and easy for counting, but one thing that you got to recognize is that the blocks are oriented differently than you're used to. So I just want to walk through how the blocks are oriented. So if you notice, you might recognize this shape. You want to focus on blocks, not triangles, okay? And so this would be an example of a block, all right, oriented this way. Okay, we call this block a rhombus. Another example would be a block oriented this way. Okay, so I'll go ahead and shade that in as well. And then even another example would be a block oriented this way. Notice the difference between all 3 of these blocks is that their orientation is different. Okay, and so you can count along those blocks. Don't count triangles, that'll just confuse you, so that you can get the size of your object. Furthermore, I want to share with you guys the layout of the axes. So as you know, there are 3 axes. When working with 3 dimensions, there are 3 axes. So let me lay them out. Okay, and I'm not laying them out in any particular order as of right now. So I can follow the grid line there. Sorry about that. And so what I've done is I've laid out the X, Y, and Z, okay? X actually moves in this direction, okay? In this direction. Y is still vertical. And Z moves in this direction, okay? Now keep in mind, these axes are infinite, so they move both this way and that way, but in order to make this a little more simplistic, we're just going to focus on the positive sides of these axes, okay? So that should help aid us in creating or finding out the size of our object. Keep in mind that width generally follows the x-axis, all right? Height follows the y-axis, and depth follows the z-axis. Okay, so if we hold those as constants, then we know which way to count our blocks in order to get the size, the 3 dimensions of the object. So I'm going to start with my width. That's the first one. It follows the x-axis. I'm just going to count the blocks down to here. And if you count the blocks, you can count the lines if you want. So you always want to start, 0, 1, or just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 8 is our width. You can shade the blocks, you can number the blocks, whatever it takes for you to get that dimension. And by the way, how do we know or what's special about counting here? Well, obviously it's in line with the x-axis, but also this will be our front view. And the reason why it's our front view is because it shows the best shape. Okay, so we'll talk about that more in a moment. All right, so next is our height, and you can see the height here. All right, we can count it here, but the only problem is it kind of falls short. So this is the tallest part of our object, so why not count it here? And sometimes that's difficult to do. So you can see if we start there, there's 5 blocks, so we'll just write that in for height. And then last, depth. And remember that depth goes from the front of an object, so if this is the front, all the way to the back. So this is the back edge right here of our object, okay? Notice that there's a straight line that goes from our front edge to our back edge. So you can count along that line. You can also make your own line, okay? And just count along that line if it's not too confusing for you. You can make that line up here. All the lines that are going along the z-axis, you can count depth along. Now you don't want to veer off of that. You want to make sure it's all in line. So this is the easiest way to count it. You can see that there are 5 blocks there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that information and begin to create my object with that information. So we talked about in creating a multi-view that there are normal views, okay? The normal views are the front, the top, and the right side, okay? The most important view being the front because it shows the best shape and the most detail. So you're going to see this object slide in and out of the video as we go along. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start laying that out in the first block. So we've got a grid of 4 different layouts, okay, and those are for 4 different objects, okay. So I'm going to start out in this gridded area to lay out problem number 1, also known as M1. And in doing so, I'm going to start with the front view. So you've been given a point here, and what we want to do is we want to count over the 8 blocks. So my grid's a little bit hard to see. I apologize. My printout didn't work out too well. You may have some of those issues in your near future as well. But anyway, so I'm counting those off. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm going to make a mark. One of the things I like to do first, which I didn't do here, is I like to lay out my x-axis, okay, and also lay out my y-axis, because remember, okay, we're going from 3D to 2D, all right, and also we've got width going this way and height going along our y. So right there's 8, and then we know our height is 5. If we look back at our sheet, it's 5. And so what I'm going to do is follow my 4-step method. My 4-step method, which is to box my object. So I'll box my object with construction lines, keeping it very light. All right, and that allows me to move to the next step. So the next step is to establish the shape. So if I bring this sheet back over, we know the shape on the front is this L shape right here. Okay, so I'll just shade this in for you. All right, I'll show you another visual of this in a moment to help you to see it better. I'll shade that in. Right there's the front. So if I take that information and I count up 2, that's going to be where this parallel line is to the bottom. And if I count over 2 from the left edge, I can see a parallel line to that left edge. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to count up 2 blocks, make a mark, and then just make a line down through there. I'm not worried about how long that line is, as long as it's long enough. Likewise, I can count over 2 blocks and make a line through there. And now you guys can see the shape of the object, okay? All right, let me show you another example to help you to understand. So this is a 3-dimensional or 3D printed part, all right, rapid prototyped, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to use that to help verify what we're doing here in just a few moments. Okay, so I'm going to set that back down, and we'll continue on. All right, so the next step, step number 3, is to add details. Well, if you look at the front surface here, there are not any details, so we'll just kind of skip that step because there's nothing to add there. So step number 4 is to darken the object. So I'm just going to go ahead and darken that shape. All right, and I like to do all my lines that are in the same direction first. If I had curves, then I would do those first, okay, and then I'll go here. Remember, you want to make sure that your lines meet each other. It's okay for them to cross. That's no problem. And right there is my front view. Okay, very simple, and you can see how it corresponds with the front on my 3D or my isometric. Okay, so from here, let me show you the relationship to your actual block. So here's the block. If we take this block and we look at it straight on like that right there, you can see that L shape, and that's all you can see. So I'm going to lay it down for you. Okay, and right there it fits nicely within that view. Okay, all right, moving on. Want to create the next view. So to create the next view, we use these things called projection lines. Really what it is you're just extending information from the front view, which you already have, to where you want to position your other views. And so the projection lines allow for that information to be extended. So I'm just going to take that along my grid lines and bring information up. One thing that the front view and the top view have in common is the width of the object. Okay, so keep those lines light. All right, so I've taken the width of this object up. It's still 8 wide, and what I want to do is give it its other dimension. And in the top view, we have width, but we also have depth. Okay, we can see the depth, and you can see that also on this paper. So we're looking at the top view, and we've got depth, right? That's where we counted along this line, and so you can see that from the top view, right? Before we do that, we want to put some space between our views. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count up 2 blocks and make a line. That line is going to represent the front of my object, okay? And then I'll count my depth. So my depth, if we go back to our sheet, that distance is 5. So from this line, I'm going to go back 5 blocks, which will take me to here, and then I'll make a mark and draw a line across to here. And again, I'm following through with step number 1, which is to box the object, okay, or box the view in this case. So I've boxed the view. Next, I want to begin to establish the shape. So the shape of this object exists right here and this area right here, okay? It's kind of a C shape, all right? And you can include the top too. It's a C shape. Just to kind of prove that out, we can look at the 3D printed model, and you can see that C shape there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to count my blocks, and this may be difficult to count on the grid, but what you've got is if you count from the back corner or the front corner, you can see it's 1 block and then a half of another. So we want to count back 1.5 blocks. Likewise, it's the same from the back towards the front. So I'm going to count 1.5, make a mark, and count 1.5, make a mark. And then I just want to make parallel lines rolling back this way. No particular distance, just further than they need to go. All right, and then we want to get the width of that detail. So the width, if you count side to side, that is 4. So we'll count 4 over, make a mark there, and strike our line, and you can now see the shape of the object. All right, so that takes us to the 3rd step, okay? And so you can kind of see how that matches up there with the shape. All right, so next we want to get the details. Add the details as step number 3. So to add the details, we can get that information possibly from the front view. We could possibly have gotten the shape, but you can't see that. So with the details, you can see there's a detail here. There's an edge we've not projected up. All we did is project up the left edge and the right edge, but you want to project up all the edges. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up, and that's going to make this line right here. Okay, because there is an edge there, and you can see it both here as well as here, here, and here. Okay, just help you better understand what that looks like from the 3D. So if I'm holding this in isometric and I rotate it around, you can clearly see there's a little bit of shadowing in here, but you can see that edge running right through there. Okay, so we represent edges, remember, with lines, and we can see that edge, so it's a visible line. All right, now there are 2 other aspects to the detail, because the detail is this little cutout. So we need to go back a block, and then from the front, and then from the back up a block. So we'll go ahead and make that happen. So I'll measure back a block, make a mark, make a line, and then from the back up a block, make a mark, make a line, okay? And so now you can see that the details have been added. So my next step would be to darken my object. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that. All right, and again, I like to do them all at the same time, but you don't have to do it this way. Do it in a way that you're comfortable with, that helps you to understand what you're doing. I just prefer, because I'm already thinking. Be careful as you darken here, because you don't want to darken in this gap. All right, and so again, what is in common between the front and the top view is the width. So you can see that carried over, and it makes sense if I lay the block this way and then I rotate it over. The width does not change, okay? But instead of having width and height, now I have width and depth, okay? So just a different dimension applied. All right, now the question is does this view and this view correspond? Okay, meaning, are all the edges consistent? And if you notice, there's not an edge right here for what's happening in this situation. But there is an edge here, and as noted, those two edges exist. So what you want to do is you want to bring a projection line down from here and to see where you need a line, because if there's something going on in the top view, that same information should exist in the front view. So what does that look like in the front view? Well, if you think about your line types, that is an edge we cannot see. So if we can't see it, it's called a hidden edge, okay? The gap is still there, okay? However, we're not showing evidence of that. And the way we show evidence of that is to project that edge down and create a hidden line right there. So it's just a dashed line. Be sure that your dashes connect with your visible lines at the top and the bottom. All right, that brings us to our next and last view of our normal views, which is the right side view. To create this one, it is very helpful to use what's called a miter line. A miter line is a 45-degree angled line that comes, if you're drawing, it always comes from the front view, and if you're drawing the top and the right side, it comes from the top and right corner, where the top edge and the right edge meet each other, even though the object may not touch that corner of your box. It always comes from the top corner of your box, okay? So if I were drawing the top and left side, then it would come from that corner there, which is the top and the left, okay? If I were doing the left and the bottom, then it would come from the bottom left corner, and also if I were doing the bottom and the right, it would come from the bottom right corner, okay? And the object doesn't necessarily have to touch there, but your box always will. Okay, so let me make this miter line. It's 45 degrees. It only works at 45 degrees because the rise run of a 45-degree angle is 1 to 1, which makes it equal. 1 to 1 means equal. All right, if you do it as a ratio, whereas a fraction, it just ends up being 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to take first, after creating the miter line, we're going to take information over from the front view, okay, to the right side view, because one thing that the right side view and the front view have in common is they have height in common. If you think about the right side of your body versus the front, your height does not change when you rotate 9 degrees, and these are 9-degree rotations between views. So I'm bringing the height over from the front view to the right side view. What the right side view and the top have in common is depth, and we can project the depth using the miter line. So that's why we use the miter line. So I'll bring over the depth to the miter line. Where it intersects the miter line, drop that straight down, and this allows me to apply step number 1, which is called box method, or boxing the object. Okay, so we bring that down, and right here, right here is your box for the right side view. Okay. We shouldn't have to measure anything to create this view. All right, we did measure to create this view, and we measured to create that view. Not all of it, but a lot of it. So here we don't need to measure. We may not need to measure anything, but we'll see kind of how that works out. All right, the next step is to establish the shape. So if you look at the right side, okay, so I didn't shade the top, but here's the top. Okay, just to have that shaded. All right, that's part of the top, and then this is the top, and this part right here. It's all got to be facing the same direction for the most part. All right, we'll explain exceptions to that at another point. So now you're seeing what the top looks like, and you can see how it corresponds to your view up here. So that's what I shaded first, and then I came in and shaded this area, and then I shaded these two. And that's the top view, okay? They're just all visually connected in 2D. All right, so you can see that from the right side, okay, I'll shade the right side in at a different angle. Should be using different colors here, and I'll show you an example of that so you can see that reality. Okay, the right side is this information right here, but it's very easy to leave off this surface right there, okay? So that's the right side view, and if you notice, the shape is right here in this detail, okay? So we want to create that shape, so I'm going to move this out of the way. Notice first before I do, it's a block over, a block down, and that's also true from the back as well. So we want to go from the front edge, okay? And let me help you understand this. So starting from the front, it's important to know where you are when working with these multi-views. If I rotate this over, notice this is the front. I want you to see where the front is in the top view, okay? So the front is right there, right? This is the front edge right here. And so opposite that is the back edge. Likewise, if I take the block back to the front view, and then I rotate it so I can see the right side, because we know this is the right side, all right, based on how we're seeing things. And I rotate it to see the right side. Notice where the front edge is, okay? The front edge is right here. So the back edge is over here on the other side. And I can move that to just make it a little bit clearer for you in just a moment, okay? Or here, and I'll go ahead and do that. All right, so you've got your front edge and your back edge, all right? And you can see where your detail is going to be, all right? So what we want to do is we want to count over one block, make a mark, maybe go ahead and make a line. Likewise, count over one block, make a mark, make a line, and count down one block, and there's your shape, okay? So that's the shape. That takes us to the next step. The next step is to add the details, okay? So step number 3, add details. And we can get that information from the front view and the top view. So from the front view, we bring this information over right here, and that creates that information. And by the way, I didn't mention this earlier, but I could have gotten these two edges from right here and right here just by bringing them over to the miter line and dropping them down, okay? To get the rest of this detail, there's 3 blocks here, okay? So one in the middle, and then this one here. So I can get that from the top view, so I can bring this information over, drop it straight down. Now with all these lines, sometimes it gets confusing, all right? So you can kind of decide how you want to do that. You can count if you want to, all right? I just kind of lighten that up a little bit so it doesn't get too crazy. And right there are the details, okay? So hopefully you can see that fairly well. Darken that up just a little bit for you guys to see. And so now I've got my details, and I'm ready to move on to my next step. My next step, step number 4, is to darken the object. So let me go ahead and begin that process. So again, you know, do the lines how you're comfortable with creating those lines. I like to do them all the same direction first, as I mentioned earlier. Nice thing is we have a grid, so we can follow that grid very easily. Okay, helps to make sure that our communication is neat and clean. Okay, and so that's the right side view. Just another look at it in 3D so you can see it. Now obviously it's exaggerated because you're truly seeing this block in 3D. So, and that shadow is messing things up a bit for me. Let me see if I can move that around just a little bit for you guys. But you can kind of see what's going on there. Okay, I need to get a better recording of this. Anyway, moving on. So let me take that block out of the way. Now, again, like I asked earlier about the top view corresponding with the front view, does the right side correspond with the front view? And the answer is no, they're close. Okay, if you look at the edges, this edge exists over here. Okay, this edge exists over here, and this edge exists over here. But if we go vice versa, this edge exists, this edge exists, this edge does not. So we bring that over, and we can't see this from the front. It does exist, so you can see it there on the right side, but if we rotate it over to the front, you can't see that feature, but you can see that it does exist. Okay, so we need to show that edge, and we show that like we did from the top view with a hidden line. Okay, that edge does exist. And now all of our views correspond. Okay, so that is the completed layout for M1. So what we want to do is in these guidelines here, and you've got them in each block, we want to actually put in the problem number. We call it problem number even though there's a letter in there. Okay, so the next problem that you guys will be doing will be over here, and it's M2. So we'll go ahead and label that M2 to the right. And then, if I'm not mistaken, the next one here will be M. These guidelines are really close to the bottom of the paper or the border there. This will be M11. And then the last one that you guys will do on this paper will be M20. And I'll have another video for M20, okay? You guys can, or excuse me, I think it's M21, all right, for M21. So be looking for that video for M21. But those are the 4 drawings that you'll lay out. Remember to start from the given point to create your front view. So I'm going to just begin to lay it out. Again, what you want to do is to get the dimensions off the object. So I start with width, height, depth, and get those dimensions. Once I get those dimensions, I start to box out my front view first and work from my front view to get my right side, my top and my right side. Really, it doesn't matter which one you do second, whether you go top or right side. I just like to go to the top second. Let me show you another visual just to help you guys out. Okay, so this is what I usually do when we're together at school, and I've got color pencils at the ready. So I've shaded what would be the front in yellow, and notice that in yellow you can see that you can't truly see that surface, it's hidden, but that helps us to understand the idea of the hidden line over here, okay, because we've got a surface we can't see behind there. Same here with this surface here, we can't see it, so that hidden line's kind of making that evident that there's something going on there, so we look at our other views to clarify that information. Okay, so that should get you guys headed in the right direction. Let me go ahead and give you guys the dimensions that you need, or we can work out the dimensions that you need. Sometimes it's a little harder to count, but right here, you could make a straight line through here, or you could count only in this direction as you move down. And what you'll find is you've got 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks for the width. Okay, and what I would do is maybe kind of box this in 3D. So I'd take this line straight up, and then this is the top edge, so that's the left edge, and bring the top edge over, and where they meet would be the top corner of the box, right? So if you just count from the bottom here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the height is 5. Be careful, you don't want to, if you're counting the height, you don't want to count in this direction here, like horizontally or whatever. You want to make sure you're only counting in the Y, along the Y axis. So vertical, and then you can skip over to here and go up again and get the other 2.5. Depth, remember, you only want to go front to back. You want to only go in the Z, Okay, so this is a reminder for you guys. So you need to do this on your paper so you can look back at it as a reminder. And again, it's 5. Okay, so this one happens to have the same dimensions as the one prior to it. So all I need is the width and the height for the front. Notice what it looks like. So I'm going to walk you through the first step and let you guys take it from there. So again, from this dot, first thing I want to do is I want to lay out my X axis, lay out my Y axis. Okay, so we're converting from 3D to 2D. It is 8 wide, so there's 4, right there's 8. Okay, I could go ahead and make a vertical line there. All right, and then the height is 5, so go up and mark 5 and make my horizontal line, and right there's my box. All right, that takes you to the next step, which is to establish the shape. Okay, and that's just a matter of, counting blocks and getting the right size. So if I start at the bottom, over 1 block, up 1 block, and same from the other side. So I would just go over. We're trying to establish the shape, and we can make lines right there. Keep it light to get it right. Okay, and right there's the bottom of that shape. To get the other details, this problem is pretty simple. Okay, to get the other details, what you've got is you just count up 2.5. Okay, and then it goes over. Don't worry about how far it goes over, but you can. I mean, it just goes over 2 blocks. Same on the other side. So what I would do is just go up 2.5 from the bottom, right there. You can do that from there as well, marking on the other side. And you could go all the way across. I prefer not to, because that kind of confuses me, and I end up drawing a line, a dark line all the way through there. And then I know that the width is 2 blocks, so I can lay that on 2 blocks, and right there's my shape. Okay, and if you look inside this, there are no details on this front, okay, other than what affects the shape. So I can skip that step and go ahead and darken and then move on to the next view. Okay, remember, from this view, project to create your top and your right side. Don't forget about the miter line to help keep the right side and top views consistent. Okay, I hope it goes well. I look forward to seeing your sketches as you guys turn them in, and be looking for a video on M21 just to support what you guys are doing. Okay, all right, take care, and best wishes. See you tomorrow.